Let's do breaking news now. Immigration Customs and Enforcement has just revealed in the last short time a police officer working in Illinois is an illegal immigrant. Radule Bojovic works for the Hanover Police Department. He graduated from the academy in August, but he has been living in the U.S. illegally for a decade after his tourist visa expired in 2015. His illegal status was discovered as part of Operation Midway. So we wanted to bring you the very latest on that.
Well, as if their handling of immigration matters was not already bad enough, it appears that the Chicago area police departments may be under another scandal this week after ICE apparently made an arrest of one of their active duty police officers who was revealed to be working as a cop while being an illegal alien. Yes, this story is real, and yes, this is the reality of JB Pritzker's Chicago. But I don't want people to be under the false assumption that this case is in any way an anomaly or a special exception, because this is not even the first time in the past couple of months where ICE has made arrests of police officers working while being illegal aliens. We had a similar situation go down in Maine just back in July. And I think when you keep seeing this story happening time and time again, it raises a couple of interesting questions. First and foremost, there's obviously a great irony to someone working in law enforcement while their entire existence in the United States is actively violating the law. But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, does anyone find it interesting how the Democrats, the party who is supposedly such big proponents of gun control, they want to disarm the Second Amendment for average American citizens, are not only so lax, but actually actively supportive of giving out firearms to illegal aliens who are allowed to deputize and patrol normal American citizens. You know, you're talking about people, about gun control, who under federal law are not even legally allowed to purchase a gun, and yet here we are. Well, we'll talk more about that in a second. First, though, I do want to actually tell you the details and tie it all back to JB Pritzker. I mean, after all, keep in mind, while he's the one arming illegal aliens in his state, while in Chicago, it's basically impossible for a normal civilian to get a gun, but apparently, if you're an illegal alien, you can get a gun just fine, right? And then furthermore, relate that to his current rhetoric against ICE, because every time ICE does anything, ICE can basically just drive their car around in Chicago and he'll say, this is the Gestapo, these are Nazis. Well, fundamentally, this is what Pritzker is opposing. And yes, he is indeed kind of scared, much like most Democrats are, that apparently we seem to be disarming the secret militia they were trying to build on behalf of violent revolutionary leftists in this country. Whether that's them apparently handing out guns to illegal aliens or the organized Antifa terror cells that we've also been talking about a lot lately on the channel, or the Mexican and Latin American drug cartels who Democrats are apparently the biggest supporters of, you're starting to notice a little bit of a pattern here, and I want to tie that all back together. So we'll get into it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work and ensure that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, so here's the information, right? It doesn't sound real. Keep in mind, this is just a month after the straight coming to America Eddie Murphy story with that Iowa superintendent. And then again, you saw one back in Maine during July. Here we go, though, again. So an Illinois police officer living in the United States illegally had been arrested by immigration authorities, announced by DHS on Thursday. This guy is named Radule Bojovic, an illegal immigrant from Montenegro, who was working as a sworn police officer with the Hanover Park Police Department and was taken into custody during Midway Blitz, which targets illegal immigrants living in Illinois because of the state's sanctuary policies, federal officials had said. Now, there's a lot actually more to this story because, Pritzker is actually directly implicated. We'll explain why in a second. But first, Fox News Digital has reached out to the police department and the office of Pritzker on this issue. But no response known thus far. But the Assistant Homeland Security Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said the following, quote, JB Pritzker doesn't just allow violent illegal aliens to terrorize Illinois' communities, he allows illegal aliens to work as sworn police officers. Yes, again, Radule Bojovic violated our nation's laws and was living illegally in the United States for 10 years. What kind of police department gives criminal illegal aliens badges and guns? Going on here to note as well, again, the gun control party here apparently thinks this is fine. It is a felony for aliens to even possess a firearm, even if you are a legal resident alien in the country, right? I'm not sure if permanent legal residents are allowed to have, someone can fact check me, but I know for a fact, if you're on a tourist visa, you're on a student visa, temporary work, whatever, your status is up in the air. Yeah, you cannot walk into a store and purchase a gun. But apparently they think it's perfectly fine to deputize these people and have them carrying guns out in these streets. A law enforcement officer who is actively breaking the law, she added. Well, go figure, right? We're talking about Chicago here. Common pattern, again, with these Democrat cities and apparently the type of people who they want to be working as police officers, right? They don't want the normal, patriotic, well-meaning American citizen. No, they want to hire the illegal aliens from Eastern Europe and Latin America and all these places that it's like, what, right? But anyways, under President Trump and Secretary Noem, ICE is restoring law and order. Criminal illegal aliens have no place in our communities, especially on our police forces. Well, that should be common sense. But again, going back to the gun control point, something I've been trying to raise a lot lately is the simple and true fact that Democrats do not support gun control because they don't want anyone to have the guns. Right? Because you know the story there, and we don't have to go through the arguments time and time again as to why gun control doesn't really work in disarming, say, the criminals or the terrorists or whatever. But no, again, what is this really about? The whole agenda behind it is to simply disarm the people they don't want to have the guns. See, when it comes to the people they do want having the guns, whether that's the criminals who they know will slip through the cracks, okay? Don't pretend like they're just naive or they really think the gun control is going to work. No, they want these violent criminals to have the guns because they want to be able to enforce that wild anarcho-tyranny against the normal American citizen. The Antifa groups, for instance, that Donald Trump just started throwing terrorism charges against. We covered that yesterday, actually, in regards to the 50 firearm holding, Antifa terror cell that launched that attack against the ICE facility in Texas on the 4th of July. And of course, what are Democrats saying about that? You can't bring terrorism charges, right? Antifa is just an idea. It's not real. Why? Because they're perfectly fine with these Antifa terrorists having the guns, right? Because as I've been saying for a long time, the Democrat agenda, at least in the short term, is basically not direct government tyranny. It is anarcho-tyranny, which is to say the government can stand there. And this is the way they govern in places like Portland and Chicago. I mean, you literally see it, right? And pretend to be this moderate neoliberal institution. Oh, this is democracy. Oh, you vote for your leaders. But in reality, they basically just stand back and watch and allow these violent paramilitary forces of the Democrat Party, whether that's Antifa or the drug cartels or the gangs or whatever, to run around and terrorize people essentially on their behalf, right? So basically, they don't have to get their hands dirty and look like super tyrannical people, although sometimes they do, because in reality, they know this mob of characters, including apparently the illegal aliens who they're very busy lately in the past several years, deputizing as police officers, can just go out and, do some of that work for them. So again, this is the central idea and the point I'm trying to make here, right? Again, gun control is not about, public safety or they just don't believe anyone should have guns. No, it's about intentionally disarming a certain subset of American society who they don't want to have guns. And that is actually the law-abiding patriotic citizens. So that way, again, their violent terror mobs can run around and control the country instead. That's why they're perfectly fine, again, with their people, aka illegal aliens, being one of the top Democrat constituencies, being armed. And of course, we are the bad guy for saying, no, actually, illegals should not have guns in this country. So anyways, the details here go on. An August 22nd Facebook post by the police department showed Bojovic, this is recently, being congratulated for graduating from the Suburban Law Enforcement Agency. He's since been replaced on administrative leave pending an investigation. Now, in a news release, the village of Hanover said this guy was hired back in January and the city had confirmed he was a legally authorized person by the federal government to work in the United States. Well, who was the president up until January 20th of this year? Very interesting, right? He's presented the city with a work authorization card, which was issued by the federal government's U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, it said. Okay, but I again say even still, even if he's a temporary protective status or whatever, that doesn't mean he gets to carry a gun, right? So you're not going to go on and say that. But anyways, it does appear that there is some type of mistake that was made by the federal government that allowed the work authorization to go through. That is the excuse that the Chicago police departments are apparently making. We'll address that in a second because you'll see that's just straight up wrong. No, actually, Chicago law just allows illegal aliens to work, and the excuse doesn't make a lot of sense. But first, I do want you to take a listen to what the new Chicago ICE field director had to say about, again, how exactly this guy, first of all, received the federal work authorization. So check it out.
No topic was off limits. We asked all the pertinent questions, but we started with the arrest of a Hanover Park police officer, Officer Bojovic, who DHS says overstayed his visa in 2015 and is an illegal immigrant. But the village of Hanover Park says he had federal work authorization this year. I asked the director if they detained a legal resident of the United States.
Yeah, he overstayed his visa. He was, admitted on a visa, and he overstayed that visa for nearly a decade. So he doesn't have any lawful status in the U.S. I mean, he did, USCIS, which is Citizenship and Immigration Service, did issue him a work authorization card, but he didn't have any lawful status here in the U.S.
So if CIS is issuing him a work authorization card, is that a mistake on their part to not flag that he did not have lawful status?
It might not be a mistake. I mean, like the one thing with talking about some of the immigration law, it's very nuanced, it's very complex, right? I think that it's just probably second to like tax law, just the complexity of it. And so there's different ways that somebody could, like they might be here illegally, but they might apply for some type of benefit or some type of asylum, and then through that application, they might be authorized to work during that time frame while they wait for that application, but still have no legal status.
Is he violating any law if he gets the work authorization? And per Illinois law, with his documentation, he was allowed to become a police officer.
And I think that's where the rub is on this, right? Where we have some state laws that conflict with the federal law, because with his status, his immigration status, by federal law, he wasn't authorized to have that weapon.
Right. So as he alluded to there, and let's delve a little deeper into this guy's quote unquote immigration background, you'll see that federal authorities said Bojovic was in the U.S. on a tourist visa that required him to depart by March 31st, 2015. So he came back here on tourism in 2015 and just never left. He's been here for the past 10 years. Over a decade later, he was still illegally in the United States. Now, it's worth noting this is an extremely common form of illegal immigration that frankly does not actually get talked about enough, right? A lot of people come over the border and they do the asylum thing. A lot of other people come here on a tourist visa or a student visa or something, and they just never leave. They just vanish into the United States. But in this case right here, you'll also see the bureaucratic problem, which is despite the fact, okay, one of the biggest things that happens when you get an interview for a tourist visa, you have to really make sure, and they're very strict about, you have to leave the United States after this, right? You're not going to stay, you can't just fraud this, and you especially can't start working. And yet, for whatever reason, CIS says to a lot of these illegal aliens, and that's exactly what their status becomes one day after they overstay the visa, hey, here's a work authorization for what reason exactly? I don't exactly know. Now, I'm sure under the new Trump administration that this type of stuff is not happening in terms of the issuance of new work authorizations, but you also have to go deep down the rabbit hole of how much fraud basically was being allowed by our federal bureaucracy for the past several decades. But anyways, as an officer, Bojovic was approved by the Pension Funding Board of Trustees in January of 2025 and was eligible to receive a starting salary of $78,000 to $79,000 a year, according to DHS. But I'm sure, of course, we will be told that, all the illegal aliens are simply working the jobs that Americans won't, right? There's not a single illegal we can even find to work on the police department, hence why we had to go here for the illegal alien. Now, that said, okay, you'll start to see the excuses here because people are claiming stuff like this right here, right? Defenders of JB Pritzker saying, quote, "What the heck does Governor Pritzker have to do with a local police department hiring decision? Do the people running the DHS Twitter account not even know the basics about how state governments work," right? Because DHS was being attacked for saying, and I quote, "Governor Pritzker doesn't just allow illegal aliens to terrorize Illinois communities, he allows them to work as sworn police officers. Bojovic overstayed a B-2 tourist visa that required him to depart in 2015. Over a decade later, he was still illegally working as a police officer, earning that salary of $78K, etc., etc." Except as DHS, ladies and gentlemen, points out in response, that is not true. And this is further why even if maybe CIS did issue that work authorization, I do not believe that simply at the surface because of the fact that, as you can see, just a couple years ago, the state of Illinois, under the leadership of JB Pritzker, did what? Well, here is the reporting from NBC5 of Chicago. JB Pritzker defends an Illinois bill that allows non-citizens to become police officers. Critics argue that the bill would allow those who entered the U.S. illegally to become police officers, but the governor is pushing back against those arguments. Interesting, right? So it's almost like this should not be shocking to anyone because it's actual Illinois state law that you can hire these people to be police officers who are literally illegal aliens. As I said, right? Why exactly are Democrats basically opening up and arming a militia of illegals? Well, you tell me that right there. And certainly don't come here and claim that I'm being like some type of conspiracy theorist or misrepresenting Democrat policies because, again, new Illinois law allows non-citizens to become police officers. So, indeed, it is pretty straightforward. And, of course, that might further explain why JB Pritzker is so mad this week over what Trump is doing, going so far as to say he will prosecute. He wants to bring charges against Stephen Miller, Tom Homan, and ICE agents for enforcing federal law and cracking down on the fact that, again, this insurrectionist Democrat is arming illegals against American citizens. Take a listen.
The people who serve for the president, including all the way down to ICE agents, can be held accountable when there's a change of administration who's willing to hold them accountable when they break the law. Now, Stephen Miller is clearly ordering people to break the law. So, he should know that, it may be 3 years from now that he is held accountable, but make sure, I think it's important for them to know that whatever they do now, it's not like we're going to forget, and it's not like we don't have a record of what they're doing. So that is why I mentioned Stephen Miller. That's why I mentioned other people, Tom Homan and Gregory Bovino, who's the CBP leader on the ground, the one who executed their orders in Los Angeles, which was, they did an awful job in Los Angeles and created all kinds of mayhem on the ground. Now he's doing it in Chicago. And so all these people need to recognize that, you may have immunity because Donald Trump's willing to pardon anybody that's carrying out his unlawful orders. But you're not going to have it under another administration.
Right. Well, hopefully, are you starting to notice a pattern of what under the Democrat worldview is a serious crime and what is not? Because, for example, assault, carjacking, doing fentanyl in the public parks in front of children, terrorism and murder even, Democrats do not believe are serious issues that really should be persecuted or prosecuted by society. Of course, unless you're like a white guy doing that, then it's a serious hate crime. But turn around and say we're going to enforce federal immigration law. We're going to deport basically the militia and the voter base and the general constituency you're trying to build in this country. Then that's when they lash out. Then that's when they have a really epic and insane meltdown about all of it, right? I've been saying for a very long time that the real constituency of the Democrat Party, aka the people they appeal to, they want to support them, and they make policy for, are basically all the collections of like the worst people on earth, right? Who is it? Violent criminal illegal aliens, the cartels, international arms traffickers and terrorists, fentanyl addicts in public parks who are, scaring all the children, right? These are the people that Democrats believe are truly the richest and most contributing and important members to be having around in society. And yet they've gotten mad at us for recent comments from Trump administration officials like this that are, first of all, completely true, and secondly, completely indicative of their own behavior and the type of people they clearly constantly are fighting for.
Proved that the Democrat Party's main constituency are made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals. That is who the Democrat Party is catering to, not the Trump administration and not the White House and not the Republican Party, who is standing up for law-abiding Americans, not just across the country, but around the world.
Well, he's a fool and he's a moron, but also, most importantly, Sean, he hates America. And let's just be honest about it. You can't love your country and then fight President Trump to keep murderers murdering. Just think about that for a second. President Trump is saying, let us work with you, with the FBI, with ICE, with ATF, with DEA, with the National Guard to stop the murdering in your city. And Pritzker is saying he wants to protect the murderers, the people that are shooting dozens and dozens of people every single week. Chicago is more dangerous than Baghdad. It's more dangerous than Mexico City. So shame on Pritzker, and God bless President Trump for fighting for the citizens of this country, Sean.
Right. Well, again, as I've been saying, there's a very clear reason why Democrats are actually doing all of this. Do not disregard them as some naive hippies, right? Their crime policies do not come from this place of, oh, you know, we just want to see the best in people, and we want to feel better about criminal justice, and we want to be more humane. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, the hippie sort of tagline would have been accurate when it came to Democrats, but you can see it out in the streets today. You can see it with the politicians. No, they're not. It's not naivety. They know absolutely what they're doing. Again, they are upset and they are pissed off that we want to stop and not live under anarcho-tyranny and anarcho-terrorism. And again, that's what it's really about. That's why they're giving illegals guns. That's why they actually cry the victim, and they say it's a bad thing when Trump shuts down like actual terror networks of Antifa cells who are committing violence, etc., because we're kind of uncovering their actual plan and their actual, not even just plan, like current agenda and practices of governance in the United States of America. And this is the Democrat Party. And then they got mad over it, right? They spent this whole week like crying and pearl clutching over this clip. How dare you say their constituency of the Democrats is the terrorists, illegals, and violent criminals? Oh, because it is. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not an exhaustive list, so I'm not sure if, you know, the Democrats are really offended because we weren't inclusive enough. You know, we didn't include, like, the people who want to castrate children and the fentanyl addicts and all that stuff. But, like, okay, again, it's a shorthand list, Democrats, okay? We understand, okay? Sorry we're not inclusive enough, okay? But seriously, we understand fully this is indeed what your party is about. This is who you stand for. You've never actually, like, done anything in the last several years, if not several decades, which benefits the lives of American citizens or is even intended to do that, right? All you are lately, the reason the woke thing even started is because there is a noticing of a pattern and a trend that Democrats and liberal causes increasingly go for like the strangest, most outlandish things, and then it ends up just defending the criminals. And again, why? Because that's your social agenda. That's what you guys are doing. That's why we're pointing it out. And then you guys get offended over that. Okay, well, the truth hurts. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, your party is the party of terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals. You know how we know that? Because those are the only people you advocate for. What have the Democrats stood here fighting for of the past several months? Like, what have their top issues actually been? Illegal aliens, check number one, right? That's basically been number one issue in America for the entire summer. Violent criminals. Well, of course, when it came to the DC takeover and Irina Zarutska and everything that came there, right? What were Democrats spending a lot of times talking about there, right? The violent criminals. And of course, who could forget the terrorists? Not just Hamas terrorists, but terrorists in general, and especially actually homegrown domestic left-wing terrorists. What have you spent the entire last month actually also trying to defend or downplay or make excuses for? Violent terrorism. So yes, that is the Democrat Party, right? When's the last time you even talked about the economy or like any like issue that affects Americans other than to side with foreign countries, for instance, when it comes to the trade negotiations, right? Oh, I hope Canada destroys our country in trade. So are you noticing, yes, a common pattern that the constituency of your party and your defining issues, none of them have anything to do with American citizens? That's why that analogy is appropriate. And you want to prove us wrong, then stop fighting for these people. But you won't, because that is your constituency. And you know exactly what you're doing. That said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.